Hello, guys and gals, and this is part 16 of the reading of The Last Unicorn. In the last episode, Smendrick, Molly, and the unicorn found the skull, and they found a way to the Red Bull, basically. And we're gonna see what happened. Smendrick turned water into wine or something for the skull, and it was grateful, I guess. Anyways, we are going to I guess go find the Red Bull. And this is number 16. We are reading The Last Unicorn by Peter Beagle. I know it's Peter S. Beagle, but this book just says Peter Beagle, and I don't know why you took out the S. That's kind of, I don't know. Because I know it's not the full name, which is kind of irksome, actually. Okay, so let's see. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. How can there be? Molly heard footsteps, then nothing. Then the thin, cautious ebb and flow of breathing. She could not tell where it came from. Spendrick turned to her, and his face seemed to be smudged from within, like the inside of a lantern glass, with fear and confusion. There was a light, too, but it shook like a lantern in a storm. I think I understand, he said, but I'm sure I don't. I'll try. I still think it's a real clock, Molly said. That's all right, though. I can walk through a real clock. She spoke partially to comfort him, but she felt a brightness in her own body as she realized that what she had said was true. I know where we have to go, she said, and that's as good as knowing the time any day. The skull interrupted her and said, I'll give you a bit of advice in the bargain because the wine was so good. Spindrick looked guilty. The skull said, Smash me. Just knock me to the floor and let me break in pieces. Don't ask why. Just do it. It was speaking very quickly, almost whispering. Together, Smendrick and Molly said, What? Why? The skull repeated the request. Smendrick demanded, What are you saying? Why on earth should we break you? Do it, the skull insisted. Do it. The sound of breath, came nearer from all directions, though only on one pair of feet. No, Smendrick said. You're crazy. He turned his back and started a second time towards the gaunt, dark clock. Molly took the Lady Amalthea by her cold hand and followed him, trailing the white girl like a kite. All right, the skull said sadly. I warned you in a terrible voice, a voice like hail on iron. It began at once to cry, Help! Ho! The king! Guards, to me! Here are burglars, bandits, mosh troopers, kidnappers, housebreakers, murderers, character assassins, plagiarists, King Haggard, ho, King Haggard. Now over their heads and all around them, feet came clattering, and they heard the whistling voices of the aged men-at-arms calling as they ran. No torches flared, for no light could be struck in the castle unless the king himself ordered it, and Haggard was yet silent. The three thieves stood confounded and undone, gaping helplessly at the skull. I'm sorry, it said. I'm just like that, treacherous. But I did try. Then its vanishing eyes suddenly saw the Lady Amalthea, and then went wide and bright, although they could not have. Oh, no, it said softly. No, you don't. I'm disloyal. But I'm not that disloyal. Run, Smendrick said, as he had said it long ago to the wild sea-white legend that he had just set free. They fled across the great hall, while the men-at-arms blundered loudly in the dark, and the skull shrieked, Unicorn, unicorn, Haggard, Haggard, there she goes, down to the Red Bull. Mind the clock, Haggard, where are you? Unicorn, unicorn. Then the king's voice rustled savagely under the uproar. Fool! Traitor! It was you who told her. His quick, secret footsteps sounded close by, and Smendrick set himself to turn and fight, but there came a grunt and a crack, and a scraping noise, and then the bouncing crunch of old bone on old stone. The magician ran on. That's Haggard probably knocking the skull to the ground and breaking it. Uh, when they stood before the clock, there was little grace either for doubting or understanding. The men-at-arms were in the hall now, and their clashing steps sent echoes booming back and forth between the walls, while King Haggard hissed and cursed them on. The Lady Amalthea never hesitated. She entered the clock and vanished as the moon passes behind a cloud, hidden by them, but not in them, thousands of miles away. As though she were a dryad, Molly thought madly, and time were her tree. Though the through the den, through the dim speckled glass, Molly could see the weights and the pendulum and the cankered chimes, all swaying and burning as she stared. There was no door beyond though which the Lady Amalthea might have gone. There was only the rusty avenue of the works, leading her eyes away into rain. The weights drifted from side to side like seaweed. King Haggard was shouting, "Stop them! Smash the clock!" Molly started to turn her head, meaning to tell Smindrick that she thought she knew what the skull had meant, but the magician disappeared, and so had the hall of King Haggard. The clock was gone too, and she was standing beside the Lady Amalthea in a cold place. The king's voice came to her from very far away, not so much heard as remembered. She went on, turning her head, and found herself looking into the face of Prince Lear behind him. There fell a bright mist, shivering like the sides of a fish, and bearing no resemblance at all to corroded clockwork. Schmendrick was nowhere to be seen. Prince Lear bent his head gravely to Molly, but it was to the Lady Amalthea that he spoke first. "And you would have gone without me," he said. You haven't been listening at all." She answered him then when she had not spoken to Molly or the magician. In a low, clear voice she said, "I would have come back. I do not know why I am here, or who I am, but I would have come back." "No," said the prince, "you would never have come back." Before he could say anything more, Molly broke in, much to her own surprise, crying, "Never mind all that. Where's Smindrick?" The two strangers looked at her in courteous wonder that anyone else in the world should be able to speak, and she felt herself shake once from head to heel. "Where is he?" she demanded. "I'll go back myself if you won't," and she turned around again. He came out of the mist, walking with his head down, as though he had been leaning against a strong wind. He was holding a hand to his temple, and when he took it away, the blood came softly down. "It's all right," he said, when he saw that the blood was falling on Molly Grew's hands. "It's all right. It's not deep. I couldn't get through until it happened." He bowed shakily to Prince Lear. "I thought it was you who went by me in the dark," he said. "Tell me, how did you pass through the clock so easily? The skull said you didn't know the way." The prince looked puzzled. "What way?" he asked. "What was there to know? I saw where she had gone, and I followed." Smindrick's sudden laugh rubbed itself raw against the snaggy walls, and came swimming in on them as their eyes grew familiar with the new darkness. "Of course," he said, "some things have their own time by nature." He laughed again, shaking his head, and the blood flew. Molly tore a piece out of her dress. "Those poor old men," the magician said. "They didn't want to hurt me, and I wouldn't have hurt them if I could." We dodged around and around, apologizing to each other, and Haggard was yelling, and I kept bumping into the clock. I knew that it wasn't a real clock, but it felt real, and I worried about it. Then Haggard came up with his sword and hit me. He closed his eyes as Molly bound his head. "Haggard," he said. "I was getting to like him. I still do. He looked so frightened." The dim, removed voices of the king and his men seemed to be growing louder. "I don't understand," Prince Lear said. "Why was he frightened? My father. What did he—" But just then, from the far side of the clock, they heard a wordless squall of triumph and the beginning of a great crash. The shimmering haze vanished immediately, and black silence caved in on them all. Caved in on them all. Haggard has destroyed the clocks, Mendrick said, presently. Now there's no way back and no way out but the bull's way. A slow, thick wind began to wake. We are on chapter 13. There's only 2 chapters left, I think, because I think the last chapter is chapter 14. The way was wide enough for all of them to walk, at least, but they went one by one. The Lady Amalthea walked in front, by her own choosing. Prince Lear, Smindrick, and Molly Grew followed, but only her hair had only her hair for lantern. But she herself had no light before her at all. Yet she went on as easily as though she had been this way before. Where they truly were, they never knew. The cold wind seemed real, as did the cold reek that rode it, and the darkness let them pass far more grudgingly than had the clock. The path itself was enough of a fact to bruise feet, and to be partly choked in places by real stones and real earth that had crumbled down the sides of the cave. But its course was the impossible way of a dream, pitched and skewed, rounding on itself, now dropping almost sheer, now seeming to rise a little, now working out and slowing down, and now wandering back to take them perhaps once again below the great hall where old King Haggard must still be raging over a toppled clock and a shivered skull. Witchwork, surely, Smindrick thought, and nothing made by a witch was real. At least then, he added. Oh, wait. Excuse me. The toppled clock and a shivered skull. Witchwork, surely, Smindrick thought, and nothing made by witches was real, at least. Then, he added, but this must be the last. It will all be real enough, if this is not the last. As they stumbled along, they hurriedly told Prince Lear the tale of their adventures, beginning with his own strange history, and stranger doom, recounting the ruin of the midnight carnival and his flight with the unicorn, and continuing through their meeting with Molly Grew, the journey to Hagsgate, and Drin's story of the double curse on the town and the tower. Here he halted, for beyond lay the night of the Red Bull, a night that ended for good or ill with magic, and with a naked girl who struggled in her body like a cow in quicksand. He hoped that the prince would be more interested in learning of his heroic birth than in the origins of Lady Amalthea. Prince Lear marveled suspiciously, which is an awkward thing to manage. I have known for a long time that the king is not my father, he said, but I tried hard to be his son all the same. I'm the enemy of any who plot against him, and it would take more than a crone's gibbering to make me work his downfall. As for the other, I think there are no more unicorns any more, and I know that King Haggard has never seen one. How could any man who has looked upon a unicorn even once, let alone thousands, even with every tide, possibly be as sad as King Haggard is? Why, if I had only seen her once and never again. Now he himself paused in some confusion, for he also felt that that the talk was going on to some sorrow from which he could never be called back. Molly's neck and shoulders were listening intently, but if the Lady Amalthea could hear what the two men were saying, she gave no sign. Yet the king has no joy hidden somewhere about his life. Smindrick pointed out, have you never seen a trace of it? Truly. Never seen it track in his eyes? I have. Think for a moment, Prince Lear. The prince was silent as they wound further in the foul darkness. They could not always tell whether they were climbing or descending, nor sometimes if the passages were bending once again until the gnarly nearness of stone at their shoulders sometimes became the bleak rake of a wall against their faces. There was not the smallest sound of the Red Bull or any glimmer of the wicked light. But then Smendrick touched his damp face. The smell of the bull came off on his fingers. Prince Lear said, "Sometimes, when he has been on the tower, there is something in his face, not a light exactly, but a clearness. I remember I was little, and he never looked like that when he looked at me or at anything else. And I had a dream. He was walking very slowly now, scuffing his feet. I used to have a dream," he said, "the same dream over and over, about standing at my window in the middle of the night and seeing the bull, seeing the Red Bull." He did not finish. "Seeing the bull driving unicorns into the sea," Smendrick said. "It was no dream. Haggard has them all now, drifting in and out on the tides for his delight, all but one." The magician drew a deep breath. That one is the Lady Amalthea." "Yes," Prince Lear answered him. "Yes, I know." Smendrick stared at him. "What do you mean, you know?" he demanded angrily. "How could you possibly know that the Lady Amalthea is a unicorn? She can't have told you, because she doesn't remember it herself since you took her fancy. She has thought only of being a mortal woman." He knew quite well that the truth was the other way around, but it made no difference to him just then. "How do you know?" he asked again. Prince Lear stopped walking and turned to face him. It was too dark for Smendrick to see anything but the cool, milky, shiny, where his wide eyes were shining. I did not know what she was until now," he said, but I knew the first time I saw her, and that she was something more than I could see. Unicorn, mermaid, lamia, sorceress, gorgon. No name you give her would surprise me or frighten me. I love whom I love." "That is a nice sentiment," Smendrick said, "but when I change her back into her true self, so that she may do battle with the Red Bull and free her people—" "I love whom I love," Prince Lear repeated firmly. "You have no power over anything that matters." Before the magician could reply, the Lady Amalthea was standing between them, though neither man had seen or heard her, as she came back along the passageway. In the darkness, she gleamed and trembled like running water. She said, "I will go no further." It was to the prince that she spoke, but it was Smendrick who said, "There is no choice. We can only go on." Molly came nearer, one anxious eye and the pale start of a cheekbone. The magician said again, "We can only go on." The Lady Amalthea would not look straight at him. He must not change me," she said to Prince Lear. "Do not let him work his magic on me. The bull has no care for human beings. We may walk out past him and get away. It is a unicorn the bull wants. Tell him not to change me into a unicorn." Prince Lear twisted his fingers until they cracked. Smendrick said, "It is true. We might very well escape the Red Bull that way even now as we escaped before. But if we do, there will never be another chance. All the unicorns of the world will remain his prisoners forever, except one, and she will die. She will grow old and die." "Everything dies," she said, still to Prince Lear. It is good that everything dies. I want to die when you die. Do not let him enchant me. Do not let him make me immortal. I am no unicorn, no magical creature. I am human, and I love you." He answered her, saying gently, "I do not know much about enchantments except how to break them, but I know that even the very greatest wizards are powerless against two who keep to each other. And this one is only poor Smendrick after all. Don't be afraid of anything, whatever you have been, you are mine now. I can hold you." She turned to look at the magician at last, and even through the darkness, she could feel the terror in her eyes. "No," she said, "no. We are not strong enough. He will change me, and whatever happens after that, you and I will lose each other. I will not love you when I am a unicorn, and you will love me only because you cannot help it. I will be more beautiful than anything in the world and live forever. Smithwick began to speak, but the sound of his voice made her cower like a candle flame. I will not have it. I will not have it so. She was looking back and forth from the prince to the magician. Holding her voice together like the edges of a wound, she said, if there is left a single moment of love when he changes me, you will know it, for I will let the Red Bull drive me into the sea with the others. Then at least I will be near you. There is no need for excuse me. There is no need for all that, Smindrick spoke lightly, making himself laugh. I doubt I could turn you back if you wished it. Nikos himself never could turn a human being into a unicorn, and you are truly human now. You can love and fear and forbid things to be what they are, and overact. Let it end here, then. Let the quest end. Is the world any the worse for losing the unicorns? And would it be any better if they were running free again? One good woman more in the world is worth every single unicorn gone. Let it end. Marry the prince and live happily ever after. The passageway seemed to be growing wider, and Smindrick imagined the Red Bull stealing towards them, grotesquely cautious, setting his hoofs down as primy as a heron. The thin glimmer of Molly Grew's cheekbone went out as she turned her face away. Yes, said the Lady Amalthea, that is my wish. But at the same moment Prince Lear said no. The word escaped him as suddenly as a sneeze emerging in a questioning squeak, the voice of a silly young man mortally embarrassed by a rich and terrible gift. No, he repeated, and this time the word told in another voice, a king's voice. Not Haggard, but the king whose grief was not for what he did not have, but for what he could not give. My lady, he said, I am a hero. It is a trade no more like weaving or brewing, and like them, it has its own tricks, and knacks, and small arts. There are ways of perceiving witches, and of knowing poison streams. There are certain weak spots, and that all dragons have, and certain riddles that hooded strangers tend to set you. But the true secret of being a hero lies in knowing the order of things. The swineherd cannot already be wed to the princess when he embarks on his adventure, nor can the boy knock at the witch's door when she is away on vacation. The wicked uncle cannot be found out and foiled before he does something wicked. Things must happen when it is time for them to happen. Quests may not simply be abandoned. Prophecies may not be left to rot like unpicked fruit. Unicorns may go unrescued for a long time, but not forever. The happy ending cannot come in the middle of the story. The Lady Amalthea did not answer him. Smindrick asked, why not? Who says so? Heroes, Prince Lear replied sadly. Heroes know about order, about happy endings. Heroes know that some things are better than others. Carpenters know grains and shingles and straight lines. He put his hand out to the Lady Amalthea and took one step towards her. She did not draw back from him, nor turn her face. Instead, she lifted her head higher, and it was the prince who looked away. You were the one who taught me, he said. I never looked at you without seeing the sweetness of the way the world goes together, or without sorrow for its spoiling. I became a hero to serve you, and all that is like you, also to find some way of starting a conversation. But the Lady Amalthea spoke no word to him. Pale as lime and the brightness was rising in the cavern. They could see one another clearly now, each gone tallowy and strained with fear. Even the beauty of the Lady Amalthea drained away under the dull, hungry light. She looked more mortal than any of the other three. The bull is coming, Prince Lear said. He turned and set off down the passage, taking a bold, eager strides of a hero. The Lady Amalthea followed him, walking as lightly and proudly as princesses are taught to try to walk. Molly Grew stayed close to the magician, taking his hand as she had been used to touch the unicorn when she was lonely. He smiled down at her, looking quite pleased with himself. Molly said, "Let her stay the way she is. Let her be." Tell that to Lear, he replied cheerfully. Was it I who said that order is all? Was it I who said that she must challenge the Red Bull because it will be more proper and precise that way? I have no concern for regulated rescues and official happy endings. That's Lear. But you made him do it, she said. You know that all he wants in the world is to have her give up her quest and stay with him, and he would have done it. But you reminded him that he is a hero, and now he has to do what heroes do. He loves her, and you tricked him. I never, Smindrick said. Be quiet. He'll hear you. Molly felt herself growing light-headed, silly from the nearness of the bowl. The light and the smell was becoming a sticky sea in which she floundered like the unicorns, hopeless and eternal. The path was beginning to tilt downward into the deepening light, and far ahead Prince Lear and the Lady Amalthea went marching along to disaster, as calmly as candles burning down. Molly Grew snickered. She went on, I know why you did it, too. You can't become mortal yourself until you change her back again. Isn't that it? You don't care what happens to her or to the others, just as long as you become a real magician at last. Isn't that it? Well, you'll never be a real magician, even if you change the bull into a bullfrog, because it's still just a trick. When you do it, you don't care about anything but magic. And what kind of magician is it, Smindrick? Smindrick, I don't feel good. I have to sit down. Smindrick must have carried her for a time because she was definitely not walking, and his green eyes were ringing in her head. That's right, nothing but magic matters to me. I would round up unicorns for Haggard myself if it would heighten my power by half a hair. It's true, I have no preference and no loyalties, and I have only magic. His voice was hard and sad. We are going to stop it right here for now. Let me get my bookmark. And we are getting really close to getting done here. We have 22 pages left. So, yeah, we're almost done. This has been a reading from The Last Unicorn. This is the 16th, I believe, the 16th episode. And we are going to keep reading it. This has been a reading from The Last Unicorn by Peter Beagle. And if you like this content, make sure you like and subscribe and ring the bell so you know when I upload. And if you want to support me in any way, all that information will be in the description below. As always, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.